Introductions, so I just know who's in the room, and I know some of you are on council and some of you just came because you wanted to come to another church meeting on a beautiful evening, so good for you. Tom, you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Tom Tup, I'm the congregational president.
Great, thank you.
I'm Jonathan, I am a volunteer and paid staff person.
John. Sue? Awesome, Rosemary. And are you on the council too, or you're just here for fun? Just here for fun. Okay, we're gonna have some fun.
I'm Joe Fisher. I'm on council and actually live near the Lutheran Church, Peace Church.
Oh, very
I wanted these here to be in front.
That's all right. That's all right.
Tom Ferry, I'm director of music here.
Very good.
Peter Grafstrom, member since '84.
Cool.
Ruth Peschauer, I'm on the Social Ministries Committee. Beth Stanley, I'm on the council.
Very good. Well, as Pastor Marty said, I'm Pastor Liz, and I'm the pastor at Lutheran Church of Peace in Maplewood. And we are, if you know where the 3M building is, and then you know where the Green Mill is just past the 3M building, we are just south of that, about half a mile, so south of 94. So we are just right there, and a lot of people just go right by us. So we are not in a neighborhood like this. We are right, Century Avenue divides Woodbury and Maplewood. We're in southern Maplewood, and Maplewood is this really weird community. It's like an upside down L. And so we're in the southern part, and so we don't really do much with the northern end of Maplewood, which is really Maplewood proper. We sort of sit, we're this little sliver between Woodbury and St. Paul, and then Oakdale, and everything else. So that's where I'm at. I served in Rhode Island for 7 years. I served at King of Kings in Woodbury. Rhode Island was a small congregation. Solo pastor, served at King of Kings as the associate for 8.5 years. I came home to Minnesota with my 3-year-old twins and did not want to be in charge of the budget for a while. So that worked out well, and then they got big, and so now I'm solo at Lutheran Church of Peace and have been there just over 5 years. And I'm called there as a redevelopment pastor. So I'm telling you a little bit of LCP's story, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Vitality, and then we'll look at some of the stats that are on your handout. But Lutheran Church of Peace had shrunk by about 3/4, and they woke up in 2017 and had to wonder, is God done with us? Are we closing the doors? Or is there another chapter to be written here in this community of faith? And so Pastor Justin Grimm from the St. Paul Area Synod and somebody from Churchwide in Chicago came in, and Pastor Sarah Henrik was their interim, and they wondered together. They did a whole feasibility study. They studied the building, they studied the community, and then they studied the happy remnant, as they referred to themselves, that was left, and their history, and then they did a pledge drive in the summer to see if people were committed, and they were, and the building was in good shape, and the community had some possibility around it, and so the community that was there applied for 2 grants, one from the St. Paul Area Synod and one from the ELCA. They received both grants. That allowed them enough support to call a full-time pastor. And as we receive those grants, we are officially in the redevelopment process for the Synod. And that means that we do some things, and that also means that 50% of my call is written in, that 50% of my call is to be about redevelopment, is to be out in the community. So the first thing that meant was that I can't do all the things that you might be used to the pastor doing. And so I interviewed, and we joked that it was sort of love at first sight on both sides. I interviewed on a Friday, we were back on a Sunday, and on Monday they called me right in December. And so, but I had to interview like with the windows shut because I moved 4 miles down the road. And so a lot of the folks at LCP knew a lot of the folks at King of Kings, and they were really good. And they, after my vote, the council president said, our first gift to Pastor Liz is to let her tell her community. And so they did. They kept that quiet so I could do that. And so we have been on this journey of redevelopment, and the first thing we did was write a new vision statement. We claimed 5 values and 4 priorities. We did all of that in the first sort of year and a half, while we then rewrote the Constitution so it would reflect how we were actually functioning. And we claimed that vision statement, the priorities and the values in the fall of 2019. Well, we all know what happened in March of 2020, right? And we had decided that the value that we would embrace was engaging community. And so during COVID, all of our decisions were around how are we going to engage community. And so that led us down a whole different path, and it's been going really well. We've been having a lot of fun, and our values are boundless joy, engaging community, bold innovation, faith-centered lives, and radical hospitality. And so we've been working on those, and they pull us forward, and they've been energizing us. And the first thing we did, though, was we joined the Synod's Year of Renewal cohort. It started the week before I started at Lutheran Church of Peace, and 2 weeks before Lent began. And we began a whole deep listening campaign, and we were worshiping about 60, and we did about 60 interviews, just receiving people's stories. So we listened deeply to each other, we listened deeply to God, and we listened deeply to the community. And that has been leading us forward. And I had a lot of questions and wonderings about the process for that year of renewal. And when you have a lot of questions and wonderings, some might say critique, you end up on the team. And that team is now called the Vitality Team, part of the Synod. And so I get to do a lot of work coming to talk with congregations about vitality, and meeting one-on-one with congregations, and then we have had year-long cohorts, and most recently we've had sort of one-off conversations and workshops that you are welcome to attend. There's one on April 29th, in fact, all about outreach and getting out into your neighborhood. And Pastor Justin Grimm and Pastor Kirsten Fryer will be leading that workshop, and they will have a lot of fun. And so it's been great, and a lot of congregations are saying, what do we do now that we're, after COVID, everything is different. And so the workshop that we led in February was, why are we stuck, really? What is happening? And so Pastor Marty heard about that workshop, and here I am with all of you to talk a little bit about where we are in the church today. But any questions about any of that as we get started?
Have you seen growth in the congregation?
We have seen growth in the congregation, actually. Yeah, we just received 15 new members about a month ago, which was a bit of a shock. We have sort of lots of stragglers, kind of hanger-outers, and so I said, well, let's just see who might be interested. There were a few families that I knew were, and a bunch of people, they all showed up, and I knew some of them really weren't going to join, but then they decided to, and so we had 15 join, so that was really fun. Now, any other questions that you want to know about me or about Lutheran Church of Peace? And I have twin 16-and-a-half-year-olds, so they keep me busy. One drives, so he's going to drive his sister around tonight, which is awesome. So the Vitality team has been looking at, where do we go from here? And we really see a lot of hope and opportunity. And that's what I really hope that you leave with tonight, is a little sense of hope and a little sense of the opportunity that's in front of us as the church, the wider church, because I really do believe that it's there. But then I also believe that all churches should be in the redevelopment process officially, because we really are in a process of the church being redeveloped. And so I think that part of the struggle is that it's not about going back. And that's, I think, one of the things that's been really hard to let go of, is that we want to go back. Maybe even if you were settled and you don't want to go back to the 50s, we do want to go back to before COVID, at least, right? That would be lovely. And there just simply is no going back. What there is, though, is listening deeply to what God is up to in the world and in God's church, and where God is leading us forward. So I just want to look at a few of the statistics that I put on the front of your handout, thinking about what's happening with the church today. And I think it also names a little bit of why we are stuck, really. During COVID, we would ask each other, how are you doing, really? Because we all ask each other, how are you? And we all say, what do we say? Fine, good, right? And even if whether it's true or not, that's our sort of standard answer. So we started saying to each other, how are you really? Like, I really want to know. And that opened the door for us to share more with each other. So we've been asking about the church. Why are we stuck, really? And one of the things we'll see is that we've sort of been stuck for a long time. And yes, COVID exacerbated a lot of things, and the problems were there before COVID as well. So if you look, according to Gallup, membership in houses of worship has gone down significantly in the past 2 decades. In 1999, worship attendance was about 70%. By 2018, it was 50%, and by 2020, it was 47%. And this is from Gallup, and this is across faiths. This is Islam, this is Judaism, this is Christianity. So the good news is we're not alone, that faith attendance in sort of all sectors has gone down. The bad news is that I've been in ordained ministry for 20 years, and the whole time I've been in ministry, church attendance has been going down. That made me a little sad to be looking at that. Consider also that in 1937, church attendance was at 73%, and then it held steady until the turn of the century. That was a long time to be at 70-some%, and then just to slowly, and sometimes rapidly drop. We also see decline in church attendance among the generations. Those born before 1946, 66% attend church. Baby boomers, 58%. Generation X, 50%. And millennials, 33%. So, this was happening before the pandemic. I think what the pandemic really did was shorten the projection that futurists had for the church, and we compressed a decade's worth of change into 2 or 3 years. So we're living in the projection that futurists had for us for 2030, but we're living in it in 2023. And compressing that was painful, right? It's painful to go through that much change and compression in 2 years' time. So I'd love for us to think about this for yourselves. I'd love to hear from you a little bit, because that amount of change in that short amount of time has created an incredible amount of anxiety in congregations. And I know what some of that has been for us at Lutheran Church of Peace, and for me, I'm curious as to what that has been for you. Having heard all of that, where are you stuck here at Como Lutheran Church? I'm assuming that that's some of why I'm here. What are you afraid of, anxious about? What keeps you up at night?
People that I know that are out there and are on Facebook and are going out to restaurants and doing all the things that were fairly regular attenders and now aren't.
Yeah. Lots of people who were regular attenders who took the opportunity given in COVID to sort of completely fade out of church life.
Well, one of the things that happened here on the 15th of March 3 years ago, we didn't have service for the first time around with or the last giant blizzard.
Yeah.
And it stayed that way for a relatively short time before we got online with a little bit.
Yep.
But there were just a lot of people that
ministry. Second, the question is what ministry should come back, right? And so the older population aged a lot during COVID, right?
Well, we know
We all got 3 years older, and so if you already had a group that was getting on the older side, they got older yet, and if they were the ones doing all the things, right?
Babes in arms are toddling.
Yeah, babes in arms are toddling. That's right, a lot happened. So, and we got out of the habit of some things, and you have to wonder what will come back and when, and what should come back and when shouldn't come back. Yeah. Other things? What do you think about?
Well, I grew up here and there were a lot of staff that it's, you know, their full-time professional job. They have Pastor Marty and a few others, but I think an encouraging thing I've seen us like bringing back some vitality is like professionalizing the congregation, having a part-time youth pastor for 10 or 15 hours a week. I don't know what David does, but exact hours, but like that's been the way to reactivate our youth programming, which has been going really well.
Good.
But it seems like kind of a model that I presume was more common 100 years ago, where we're kind of using the resources of the congregation to, you know, compensate members of the congregation time so they can really devote themselves. So it's not just volunteer work, but it's semi-professional. You know, what Sue does with the kitchen, what David's doing with the youth, this seems to have been working from my perspective. But I'm also the poorest attending member of the church council, so you know, take everything I say with a grain of salt.
No, what's that?
He has a 2-year-old.
Oh, yes. Those are fun times. Enjoy having little hands to hold. I miss that. So, yeah, professional staff, lay staff, volunteers. What do you do? How do you do it? Yep. And as churches aren't as big as they were, you can't necessarily support all the staff that were here before. And how do you compensate some folks? And thinking about volunteerism and being able to maybe support some people too. You know, all of that is changing as well. Yeah. What else?
I guess I would say as well, because I volunteer in another organization as well as here. And I feel like I'm doing even more because of the technology expectations of the congregation now.
blessing and a challenge. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's just the struggle for me and is how do you get engagement? Like, what is the, trying to find a way to tiptoe around saying we need help, because every announcement is, hey, you can volunteer here, hey, you can volunteer here, hey, you can volunteer here. How do you get those people engaged? And it's the people, well, my age, that it more, but just trying to figure out how to, what are we going to do to get them? They come Christmas and Easter, but how do you get them?
Yeah.
I think that's the struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, getting people back. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I noticed in the corporate world, so I'm at my office 3 days a week now, but I'm in a building that formerly had 1,000 people in it every day. And just today I had a meeting, we're consolidating all the people that are in the building and we're putting them into one wing and one floor.
Wow.
Because it's so that it's reducing the cleaning and the maintenance and
Yeah.
the filter and the drinking fountain and all that stuff. And and that makes sense, but it's like it's never gonna, the same people are never gonna come back to work. But
Yeah.
it's again like they took the opportunity and now they're at home and they like it. They don't want to go anywhere. So people are shopping with Amazon and they're working from home and they're not going as part of that same
Yeah.
reason that people aren't going to church. They just people don't need, I don't know, they don't need people anymore.
Yeah. We've had to let go of some dreams, haven't we? And that's a little what you were naming too, the meatloaf dinner. I mean, what's going to happen to it, right? And if you were planning things in March of 2020, Pastor Marty, you probably had plans for the year, and some of them we didn't get to realize, and they never came back. Or we thought we were going in a direction. Some people were adding staff or changing staff and doing we were planning to go to Tanzania in June of 2020, and we still haven't gotten back. There were a lot of dreams, personally and corporately, in our workplaces, in our faith communities, in our neighborhoods, all kinds of dreams that we had to let go of. We got exhausted. People are still really weary. Have you noticed? I think that's going to take a longer time than we thought. Whether you're going into the office or you're not, or you're retired, people are still weary and they're still lamenting. There's still a lot of grief and grieving that is happening. You didn't have a funeral, but people still died. And some people didn't get to have a funeral, and some people didn't get to be with those loved ones, and they're grieving and they're tired, and we don't seem to have quite the same stamina that we had before. There's just things about us that are different, and so all of that is there, right? And we've had to finally face some things that existed before the pandemic, problem areas at work, at church, at home, that COVID uncovered, right? We had the luxury of ignoring some of those things for at least a few more years. And, COVID just came in and tore the veil right off. And we've had to continue to pivot. Anybody tired of that word yet? And adapt and change again. And we've worried in ways that we didn't worry before. We worry about finances now. We worry about people not coming back. We worry about how we speak about sensitive issues, right? Because it's not just the pandemic, the health pandemic. There's been a societal pandemic too. And we're deeply divided. And whether you as a congregation feel that divide inside these walls or not, I know you feel it outside these walls, right? Family, friends that you can't talk to about some things anymore. That's all there. Anything else that keeps you up at night that you think about? What have you been thinking about and wondering about as a council? How did you get to the point where you said, hey, could you bring Liz in to talk about the state of the church?
place to engage. You could read the room and, you know, tell what's going on. And it was easy to just sort of go on mute. And for me personally, I think, it's still a lot of it to get the vitality going in the church again, is to get, you know, people in pews. And I don't know really how to do that. I haven't been here since 18th of February was the last Sunday I was in.
So you haven't sat in the space, yeah.
No, I came in and looked at the windows. We just had these redone.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just had those redone, but
Yeah.
it would be easy to just say, man, you know, and if probably if I wasn't on council and the treasurer, it would be easier to just, you know, not come. We bring a granddaughter, and that helps.
Yeah.
Maybe we just need to get you a kid to bring. I got that alone.
The babies, we have to see the babies. Well, let's look at this last stat, little chart that I put on the bottom of this page from Barna. This is from 2022. And I think some good or at least interesting news at any rate about how people are attending worship. So you can see in person across the board, 54%, 45%, 49%, 65%. Both online and in person. Millennials 33%, Gen X 33%, Boomers 13%, and only online, or the majority online, 21%, 18%, 22%. I know for us at Lutheran Church of Peace, we started in March of 2020 recording worship, and we did that through Easter, because we thought for sure, right, after Easter things would get better by spring, or at least by summer, and then that just wasn't working for us. Our value of engaging community is, you can't really engage anybody when you're just staring at a video camera. So then we started on Zoom. Somebody knew how to do that, and so we figured that out, and we started on Zoom, and by summer we said, well, okay, this is continuing, what do we do next? And we decided that we stole an idea from another church, and we decided to worship in small church worshiping communities. So every other week we had the congregation broken up into about 8 different small groups, if you will. Small church worshiping communities of about 10 households each. And 6 of them were online, and 2 or 3 of them were in person for folks who didn't know how to work Zoom. And so they would meet, and they would they would worship together, they would connect and pray for one another, and then they would have conversation after worship. And they had a host that would, know how to share the worship service that we would send out, and so forth, and sort of led the discussion. And then on the other weeks, we worshiped all together on Zoom, and then we would have communion together. And so that's how we worked it out at Lutheran Church of Peace. And it was fascinating because we just sort of, like everybody, threw the cards up and thought, well, we'll see what happens. And it was interesting. We had 3 couples join that year, and a person, they all said, we know we found deeper community in those online small church worshiping groups than we ever would have at coffee hour on a Sunday morning. And we thought, well, that's interesting. And we have this group of older women that always sits at the same table at coffee hour, and they all got put into different small church groups. And a few of them said, I really like that. I got to know some of the younger families that I never would have gotten to know otherwise, because we all sit at our table and we're comfortable there on Sunday mornings. And then, we started meeting in person again, and we said, well, how long do you keep Zoom going for, really? What's the magic number by which you say, okay, there's only 3 people coming every week, so it's okay now to sort of turn that off? Because it's a lot of energy, right? And I was standing in the sanctuary one morning, talking to my husband who had taken over AV stuff during COVID and to our music director, and we were wondering together about that very question. And I walked across the hall into our fellowship hall space, and a gentleman named Steve, who had been part of the church, then he left when my predecessor was there, and then he moved permanently to Arizona, said to me, and he was home visiting his daughter, who's still a member of the church, he said to me, "I'm going to rejoin LCP." He said, "I can, we have Zoom." And I walked back across the hall and I said to my husband and the worship director, "I guess Zoom is staying? I don't know what that means, but I guess Zoom is here." So we've been just sort of playing with it and trying to figure out, and we have about 20% of our worshiping body is on Zoom every week. And and Steve was one. He worshiped with us every week for a year because he could, even though he was in Arizona and he had to get up 2 hours earlier. But he could worship with his daughter every Sunday. And we have an older couple, and the husband had Alzheimer's. And they had sort of stopped coming to church probably 6 months to a year before COVID hit. But during COVID, she could get on Zoom and leave her camera off, and her husband could, wander around their apartment and do whatever he wanted to do, and she could be with and feel like she was connected to us and be in worship. And she still worships with us that way mostly. She hasn't quite been comfortable with coming back yet. So, and on Easter we had 5 states and Europe. So a couple was traveling in Germany and they tuned in. So we don't know where it's going. I see hope here and a lot of, what do we do with this? This is not why I got into redevelopment, because I wanted to create an online church. And we don't know what it means or what it looks like. We just do not have all the answers. But they're there, and I think they're here to stay. Thoughts on any of those, where the church is at right now? I think this is sort of where we've been, and I hope it helps us to see a little bit and to acknowledge, because I think that's been really, I know that other congregations I've been with, it's been hard to say, yes, COVID, and we had a lot of things happening and declining happening before COVID. So how do we sort of wrestle with both of those realities? And how do we deal with this, which is really where the church sort of is right now, at least as far as a worshiping body? What do you think of all this?
Question.
Yeah.
So where it says millennials 36% attend church, so they currently attend church, what are the odds that those people were raised in a church and then stopped going?
Yeah, that I don't know. So, but at least 33% are worshiping both online and in person. So they're sort of alternating. We have some good friends. They are quite a bit younger than us, and they started worshiping on Sunday mornings with their jammies on and having a Bloody Mary while they worshiped. It's not what I'm recommending, but they're like, some Sundays we just stay home and keep doing that because we are engaged and they have a strong faith life, but they are younger and they're like, well, that's what we're going to keep doing. Okay, they're there. I don't know what to do with that either. I'm not going to start offering Bloody Marys in worship or for suggesting that people do that. But that's just the reality, right, of where some of those millennials are. They just are thinking about this very differently. They were anyway, and now they are even more.
And we are giving out wine, so maybe they just
We are, right? And they were not taking communion with their Bloody Mary, at least, so that was good. But yeah.
We used to say way back when that the best way to get to know people in the congregation when women were able to work in the kitchen together and you learned more about their personal lives and who they were by doing that.
Yep. even more intimidating now post-COVID, when you maybe had done it once, but now you're out of the habit. I will say that people are really longing for community. Still, and maybe even more so. So I think one of the questions to ask is, where are we having opportunities for people to just be in community with each other? Some of those were the meatloaf dinners, right? Or in the kitchen. What are those opportunities today, though? What are those opportunities today? I don't expect that you're going to have answers right now, or but that's a question I would put forth, is where are the opportunities to create community today?
I think one of the things, wasn't on Sunday, day before yesterday, whatever that was, or is it next week, the David Oster House is having the little people. That's next Sunday. So down in the fellowship hall at the Sunday school hour,
Yeah.
you'll bring your kid and all the little ones, and we'll have our 3-year-olds, because they don't have anything.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a chore to, you know, bring them in here. It's hysterical if one of them runs up under the Alma table and Marty's trying to talk. But,
Yep. Had that because they forgot how to go to church too, didn't they? Right? Or never learned, right? Because they haven't even been here yet. Yeah.
But, you know,
Talk
when
about
you
muscles
think
that
about
haven't been
and then
developed.
Parents get a chance to meet and know each other, because
Yeah.
we do have a lot of families with little kids that didn't grow up here.
Yep.
Trying to gel. There's a lot of people right in my age group.
Mm-hmm.
I have kids right in my kids' age group, and we're trying to gel them so that,
Yeah.
But one of the things I worry about is like, well, if we all stay members, that's, you know, when we're 70, that's a congregation that's very small, you know,
Mhm.
and it probably doesn't keep this building going.
Yeah.
I have had a
Yeah.
couple of families with young
Buildings
children
are-
that have then brought neighbors in. We just had some new members.
We had 3 families join, and one family that's kind of part of the same group that didn't join, but is standing in line to. And, their joining is the same story that's always been true in the church. They visited here because friends with kids of the
Yep.
same age invited them to come with them. It's like,
Yep.
come check us out.
Yep.
And then they brought friends and they brought friends, and it's all personal invitation that brings people in the door. And then it's finding a peer group or building your own team once you're here that makes people stay. And there's social cohesion that we support and encourage, that's happening with the parents of young children in this place today. It's really fun to watch. Our part-time youth director is a member with kids in that age range, and he ties in very, very nicely with these people coming in the front door.
That's awesome.
It's it's nice to see growth from that population. One of the questions that comes up whenever we talk about evangelism is, how do we get more?
Yeah.
How do we get more people with more young families in the front door and get them connected so that they become part of this place and this community? And that's the cutting edge in church outreach, and it always has been.
Yeah.
That evangelical edge never goes away.
No.
When there's a Lutheran church on every corner just about, that also gets a big one.
Yeah. The church used to be the center of society, right? Used to be, right? The center of society. And long before COVID came along, we had already been sort of pushed to the edge of society. But what I like to tell congregations is there's a real easy way to get the church back into the center of society. All we have to do is walk out the door. All we have to do is walk out the door. Because you are all still part of society in a variety of places. And so part of what I think we have been called to, part of what God has been up to, is tearing down the walls. We built these beautiful church buildings, and we hung our shingle out for hundreds of years, right? And all you had to do was hang your shingle out, and people went looking for, where are you my kind of Christian? And then that's where I'll go. And so much of the population was just doing that. So we didn't have to do anything else, and we got a little bit caught on our heels, right? And we stopped going out the door into the neighborhoods, into the communities around us. So one of the things that we did, that the Synod does, is these listening campaigns. And I don't know if you have done that before, but I would say that the listening is both the means to the end and part of the end in and of itself. And we did all these listening sessions I was telling you about, and we had 20 people that listened to all these folks, 60 some folks, and I did about 30 of them during Lent. And to a person, everybody said, we've all been here for at least 40 years. We know everything there is to know about each other. And every one of our listeners said, I learned things about people. I heard stories I had never heard before. And that, I will tell you, in and of itself, started to create energy, renewed energy in our congregation. And that was in 2018 that we were doing that. And that started to connect us to the heart of what God was up to, both in our congregation and then as we got deep in the Word together. And then our council spends about 20 to 30 minutes in the Word and sharing life together and praying for each other before we get to the business of the council now. And we still get done in like an hour and a half. A 2-hour meeting is a very long council meeting for us. We just had one. We all just were like, oh, this can't go on any longer. And then we listened into the community and met with the mayor and community leaders and business leaders and schools, and started hearing what is around us, who's in your neighborhood. Did prayer walks, did all of that stuff. And it helped us know where God was leading us, and it helped us know each other and start to be re-energized. So I would commend that practice to you. We try to find spaces where we can continue to listen to each other in that deep way. And it was listening, not saying, what do you like and don't like about our church? Right? You could write those right now. You know. We all know our things. And you're on council. You know more of those things than you wanted to know. Right? It was, what's on your heart? What's your story? What brings you joy? What are you afraid of? Right? What keeps you up at night? And all of those stories came out, and we heard people's hearts. That's a whole different listening. Other questions or thoughts? How much time do I have, Marty?
Go until 8:15.
What time is it now?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I said we always spend time in the Word, so usually I start with this, but I saved it for the end. I want to just read through Acts with you. Acts is a very long book, but we're just going to read through a bit of Acts 2. Pentecost is coming, and I love this story, and it's a bit chunked up, but you know this story probably very well anyway. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Suddenly a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what seemed to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. Now there were staying in Jerusalem God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard this sound, a crowd came together in bewilderment because each one heard their own language being spoken. Utterly amazed, they asked, aren't all these who are speaking Galileans? Then how is it that each of us hears them in our native language? Parthians, Medes, and Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt, and the parts of Libya near Cyrene, visitors from Rome, both Jews and converts to Judaism, Cretans and Arabs. We hear them declare declaring the wonders of God in our own tongues. Amazed and perplexed, they asked one another, "What does this mean?" Some, however, made fun of them and said they have had too much wine. Then Peter stood up with the 11, raised his voice, and addressed the crowd. "Fellow Jews, and all of you who live in Jerusalem, let me explain this to you. Listen carefully to what I say." And then he talked about from Joel, where it says, "Your young will prophesy, and your old men will dream dreams and see visions." And then he told them all about Jesus and who Jesus was. And when the people heard this, they were cut to the heart and said to Peter and the other apostles, "Brothers, what shall we do?" And Peter replied, "Repent and be baptized, every one of you." And then with many other words he warned them and he pleaded with them, "Save yourselves from this corrupt generation." And those who accepted his message were baptized, and about 3,000 were added to their number that day. As you think about the church, which I really think we're going through this rebirthing process, and I can't imagine, right, it's not fun. We're sort of stuck in the birth canal somewhere, and there's a new something coming. We don't really know what it is. But as you think about the church being rebirthed in this present moment, where do you see connections between the experience of the Acts church and the church today? See any connections between this and what we've talked about, what you've been thinking about, what you're experiencing?
Just like Jewish Christians and Gentiles had to learn how to get together and find common ground, I think that we realize that Zoom is going to be with us, or online church. We accept that, and we're doing both. But what we haven't been able to do is blend the two. And I'm not sure what the answer is.
Yeah.
We just figured that maybe people will eventually want to come here. This is where it's really at. And
Yeah.
that's just perfunctory, that's just whatever.
Right.
And yet, we know it's not gonna go away. So,
Right.
finding that way of blending the two, just like Gentile and Jew, it's gonna be hard, but there must be ways. I just had a crazy idea that, what if we were to show some people on the Zoom church online up on our screen, so we can see who's worshiping with us, so they have a sense of being here. That I don't
Yeah.
even know if it's possible, but it's just a thought.
Yeah.
Maybe we have to find a way to not just have it separate, but bridge the two.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know the answer.
You think about how hard that was, right? For the Jews and the Gentiles to become church together, to bring that together, and create this whole new thing, was not what any of them were looking for, and it was terribly hard and bewildering, right? They thought for sure these disciples must be drunk, because what the heck is going on? It was bewildering. Anyone feel a little bewildered every once in a while right now? Yeah.
There's both fear and uncertainty at
Yeah.
Pentecost. There's also a sense of excitement and anticipation.
Yeah.
Something miraculous was happening, but they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And that expectancy maybe was a piece of it. There's a lot of emotion in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, they had no idea, no concept that this was what they were headed towards, right? I mean,
All those rules to follow.
yeah, they had just, something brand new was coming. Yeah.
I can't help but think though in terms of today where all these nations that are mentioned in Acts are no longer Christian countries. There's something happened, there was a lot of passion and
Yeah.
then there was a lot of invasions and wars and strife and, I don't know what that means about today. It's like, we're kind of at that point where it's, we have to strengthen up or,
Yeah. there have been days of, the church having sort of golden days, right? And the church having real hard days in various places around the world. Definitely. And the church was having some hard days during the story, weren't they? If ever there was a time when people thought things were over, that was it. Right? Those tongues of fire land on them. Those disciples are hiding in the upper room, fearing for their life. Fear and uncertainty is the only thing that they can see. And the only way that anything happens is because the Holy Spirit shows up and blows the doors down.
Well, I'm struck by the diversity of that group that became the 3,000, but it's not written down that the tongues of fire remained. Like they would have to figure out how to remain a community without being able to speak to each other.
Mm.
And just the diversity of that, how it would be managed. And I think, when I think about the decline of the church, there's an assumption of uniformity of thought and belief, and that's not what this church raised me to think the church was about. It's the uniformity of mission to help people.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly, when it said 36% of people my age attend church, it seems high. It's slightly encouraging, but I just wonder, some of the social pressures that brought people to church weren't good ones. And
Yeah.
it's, how do you build a more authentic church that is built out of love and welcoming when it's
Yeah.
not everyone in town judging you because they know you didn't show up to church on Sunday.
Right. Right.
And how do we embrace that versus
Yeah.
lament low attendance in smaller congregations?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you celebrate the good stuff you do? Sounds like you have amazing things going on around here. How do we celebrate that too?
One
Yeah.
theologian friend of mine says that the church is becoming what it has been for most of its history, and he talks about a faithful remnant church. And he does that without a sense of grief. The faithful remnant church was present in society, sort of the leaven within the loaf, and for most of its history, the church in different places around the world has lived through that and emerged in all kinds of new ways. And I know that Bishop Wall and others are looking to the church in Europe and in the former Soviet Union and in China, where the church has been an underground experience for the last 50 years, 60 years.
Yep.
And it emerges now in different ways in all these places with a sense of vitality and faithfulness in ministry that are inspiring. It's different. It's not, they don't go back to what they were before. They don't even try.
Right.
They emerge as something new.
Yep.
And it's not like a Christmas tree or something.
It's a better image than the birth canal, probably. Thank you. Thank you for that, Marty. Yeah, I think the church is giving way to something new. And it is a painful and a lament, and there's hope and excitement. We are the remnant that gets to carry this forward. How are we going to do that? And that's what I hope that you take with you from this, and even from all of this, right? That there is a church out there, and that God is doing something. We don't exactly know what it is. God says, "My word is a lamp unto thy feet." And when I was younger, I used to always just think about, right, so just I want to see down the aisle. Be that lamp. Show me the way. God doesn't say, "I am a floodlight," right, that shows you the whole thing. I'm a lamp. And what does a lamp do? Lamp just shows you straight down the next step. And we take the next faithful step, and we take the next faithful step. And we trust that God will have the faithful step, and the one after that already in mind for us. And boy, that sure is true in Acts, right? They took that one faithful step. Peter took that step and shared his testimony, his witness, and my testimony and witness is certainly not going to be Peter's, is not going to be Pastor Marty's, is not going to be yours. But every time we do that, people listen and the doors are opened and they hear that there is a church, right? Because some of what we have to get past is people's judgment of the church, because all they've seen is judgment from the church. And we have to keep telling them and inviting them that we are trying really hard to be a place of welcome and love and grace, and we would love to have you come and be a part of that. Come and see a church that isn't like the church from before, that is about something different and something the same. Right? Any other things from the Acts stuff? It sounds to me like you are serious about the movement of the Holy Spirit in this place, and that you are listening, and that you are being led well to listen deeply for where that Holy Spirit is calling you. And I know that it is hard and that there is much to lament, and there is much to be hopeful and excited about as well. And I hope that you take all these numbers and you take this, because they are together, right? And that they will continue to guide and lead you forward into what God's up to today in God's church.
Thank you.
Thanks. And thanks for letting me come out and talk about all this stuff. I get really excited about all of it. So if you ever want to talk more, let me know.
So the lawyer will ask a process question.
Okay?
How did you decide on what steps to take when it was okay? Planning or
Which time? Yeah, mostly it's been our leadership team, and we have some staff. I'm the only full-time staff,